Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and today's MK Media bonus episode. We have 3 shows now launched as part of our MK Media network, all within the past 4 weeks. And thank you for making them all a huge success. I know that's our audience, and I am grateful to you because I know you love these guys. And you're giving them a chance, and I think that's awesome. Today, we are bringing you some highlights from MK Media this week. First up is Next Up with Mark Halperin. Mark, as you know, is a very fair, objective reporter in a sea of liars. And this week, he proved it again, going in depth on his knowledge of Joe Biden's cognitive decline, going back to 2017 in the wake of the new book from Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. Launching this week was our latest offering that's spot on with Link Lauren. It's crushing it on the Apple charts. And Link launched his show with a hilarious deep dive dissection of Dylan Mulvaney, like only he can. And then there's The Nerve with Maureen Callahan, which is on fire. Already over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's amazing. And this week she took on Harry and Meghan. We love Maureen on Harry and Meghan, not to mention Taylor Swift and Blake Lively, as only Maureen can. This is my new greatest guilty pleasure. I just love listening to Maureen rip on these people. I think you can relate. So go and check it out right here. Got a little sample of all 3, and we'll see you again on this show on Monday. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. If you haven't heard about Riverbend Ranch, it's time you did. They have just introduced their Riverbend Ranch steaks to the marketplace. Riverbend Ranch raises their beef on beautiful mountain meadows only a few miles from West Yellowstone. Unlike most ranches, Riverbend Ranch never uses growth hormones or antibiotics. They treat their animals humanely and with respect. There are advantages of buying directly from the ranch. They can track the health of every animal from the day it is born and can guarantee that it has been healthy every day of its life. Riverbend Ranch has its own state-of-the-art processing facility on the ranch that has received several national awards as one of the best in the U.S. But most important is the quality of the beef. They age their beef to perfection for 21 days. You simply cannot buy beef like this in a grocery store. Shipped directly from the ranch to your home, you get a much better price than going through the middlemen. Order directly from riverbendranch.com. Use promo code Megyn to get $20 off your first order. That's riverbendranch.com, code Megyn, and be prepared. Once you taste it, I think you're going to be coming back for more. Again, that's riverbendranch.com, code Megyn.
And next up for us is my hope that my people in my profession in the media can do a better job. The credibility of the media is vital to our country. And today we're going to look at a case study, an example of an area that's, I think, indicative of where we are. It's a new book, Original Sin, and it's a book by 2 journalists. One is a guy named Alex Thompson, who was one of the most energetic and aggressive reporters in covering Joe Biden's mental decline. And the other author is a guy named Jake Tapper, who's an anchor at CNN. And what I want to do today is to explain to you why this book represents a crisis and maybe an opportunity for the American media to regain credibility with the public. This goes back to the question of Joe Biden's mental decline. And I continue to laugh when I hear people say, we didn't know, and we only had a hint of it, or we saw it in the debate, but not before. That's something reporters sometimes say, and a lot of Democratic officials say. It's a farce. So I've covered Joe Biden and know Joe Biden for pretty much my whole career. And in 2017, just after he left the White House, he had a book out and he was on a book tour. And I saw him do a book event, very friendly interviewer, big crowd. And he was a train wreck. He was glassy-eyed. He had trouble following the conversation. He talked tauntingly. Again, this is 2017, long before he ran for president in 2020. And I said after the event, thank goodness Joe Biden's out of office. Thank goodness he's no longer going to be in public life. And how could his family and his advisors possibly let him go on a book tour when he was in no position to be on a public stage? 2017. Now, I'm not a doctor. I know Joe Biden decently well, but I there are plenty of people who know him better. I couldn't believe he ran for president in 2020. And so, to me, his mental decline was apparent in 2017. And now what you have is a bunch of people who say it was only apparent to them on the day of the debate in the 2024 campaign. The reason this new book is causing such an uproar, even though it's not out until next week, is because the book purports to explain the cover-up inside the White House. The cover-up inside the White House of Joe Biden's mental decline. I don't understand how there could be a cover-up of something that was on television on a nearly nightly basis. In either Joe Biden's performance, which was uneven, there were times when he was fine. We've all seen people with mental decline. We know that sometimes things are better than others. But it was on TV every night. And in 2020 and 2024, it was also on TV when Joe Biden wasn't there. He was not visible. And the ability to have credibility to cover presidents was undermined significantly from 2024 back to 2019 at least. Today, Donald Trump, there's so many things that need scrutiny. His acceptance of this airplane, his family's business dealings in the Middle East with the very monarchies that he's meeting with on this trip. I could go on. For those in this country who say the press is not doing a tough enough job scrutinizing Donald Trump, I agree. The press should always be super tough. But what's happened is, because of the way they covered Joe Biden, the press has lost credibility with the public. So why is this significant? Today, this news of this new book has come leaking out. Two news organizations reporting on it. One is The Guardian, which got a copy of the book, and they report that a lot of Democrats are very unhappy that Joe Biden kept running and he should have gotten out of the race, and that there was efforts to cover up for him. Another report from Alex Thompson, who now writes for Axios, he wrote for Politico previously, says that there was discussion within the Biden camp of perhaps Biden needing a wheelchair, but he couldn't use a wheelchair during the campaign, and that if he won re-election, there was talk he would use it then. That's interesting. Those are interesting things. I don't doubt either of those things are true. But it's this question of accountability, this question of, did reporters do everything they could to hold Joe Biden and his team accountable for his obvious decline? Few interviews, few press conferences, few public appearances. Doing things in public, not every day, but often, that showed obvious mental decline. This wasn't something for insiders to know or whisper about, the terms of the cover-up were, but the fact of Biden's decline was not a secret, and the public saw it. So these two guys have now written this book, okay? And their publisher, aware of the criticism that's already come their way, saying, how can you write a book after the election about a cover-up that we all saw with our own eyes during the campaign? Made a video, a publisher making a video, not that common. Here's a bit of the video they made, trying to establish the bona fides of the two authors, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Tapper, that they were on this from the beginning.
Will you pledge that if you're elected, you will be transparent about your health,
Yes.
all facets of your health, with urgency, so that we know?
Yes.
One poll shows that almost 2/3 of Democratic voters want a new nominee in 2024, and the top reason they gave was your age. You know, that's not a good number for President Biden. 2/3 of the American people say he's not sharp enough to be president.
Yeah, I mean, how can you use the bully pulpit when you don't have a bully you can put in the pulpit?
Okay, so you're part of the 23% of adults who are not concerned about the president's ability to be president because of his age and stamina. I mean, I know incumbents in general are not popular right now, but do you ever think maybe we should have a new candidate?
There's a little bit of denialism with the president.
This is a particularly bad week for this report and its comments about President Biden's faculties and his memory to come out, because twice this week he has acted as if he, in 2021, spoke to European leaders who have been dead for years. Part of the job of president is having the confidence of the American people in your faculties.
The White House's response every single time it has come up for 3.5 years has been to deflect, to gaslight, to not tell the truth, not just to reporters, not just to other Democrats, but even at times to themselves.
So you saw, and if you're listening on the podcast, you heard there two voices. One is Alex Thompson, who was an aggressive reporter, as aggressive as almost any reporter, in trying to figure out what was going on with Joe Biden's mental acuity and how his team was handling it. And then you heard the voice of Jake Tapper. And the publisher did as good a job as it could to find clips of Jake Tapper seeming to be at least interested in the topic of Joe Biden's mental decline. So we thought, well, what are the counters to that? Because I know that no one at CNN was particularly aggressive about this, and I had no indication from my memory that Jake Tapper was aggressive. So we went and looked at the full appearances, the full segments in which Jake Tapper was, in which clips were pulled for that publisher video, to ask ourselves, did the full clips demonstrate that Jake Tapper, in attitude and determination and focus, was in real time during the campaign during Biden's presidency interested in getting to the bottom of this. So let's look at some of the clips from the publisher video, but beyond what they chose to include. Here is Joe Biden's interview with Jake Tapper in 2022.
You're about to turn 80 next month. Happy birthday ahead of time. Whenever anyone raises concerns about your age, you're the oldest president in the history of the United States, you always say, watch me. Voters have been watching you. Democratic voters approve of the job you're doing. Democratic voters overwhelmingly like you. But one poll shows that almost 2/3 of Democratic voters want a new nominee in 2024. And the top reason they gave was your age. So what's your message to Democrats who like you, who like what you've done, but are concerned about your age and the demands of the job?
Well, they're concerned about whether or not I can get anything done. Look what I've gotten done. Name me a president in recent history who's gotten as much done as I have in the first 2 years. Not a joke. You may not like what I got done, but the vast majority of the American people do like what I got done.
So he wishes him happy birthday. He asked him about one poll. He's not asking him about what was already in evidence then, which is mental decline. He's simply saying there's a poll that says Democrats don't like you. So I look at that and I say, that's not the way I would have asked it. That's not a guy who was determined to get beyond just asking about a poll. That's a guy who was want to wish that president a happy birthday. All right. Here's another clip. This is again from another interview that another appearance the publisher included. This is the White House press secretary and Jake Tapper asking her a question. Again, this is from the same segment that the publisher used to prove that Jake Tapper was serious about getting to the bottom of this cover-up.
That's what I'm saying. That's the 77% who are concerned.
No, but I've had conversations with some of your colleagues in the White House press corps when we travel abroad, how it is hard for us to keep up with this president who is constantly working every day to get things done and making sure that we are delivering for the American people. And I think that's what matters. I get it. I get what you're asking me, but the record matters too, Jake. What he's been able to do, no other president has been able to do if you look at his legislative record. And that matters.
What did the White House do to try to control the press, to keep them from asking? A compliant and pliant press. One is they privately called them and browbeat them and said, do not cover this. If you cover this, you'll be cut off. I don't know if they did that to Jake Tapper or not, but they also did what she did there in public. They said things that were ridiculous. Oh, he runs circles around us. He's tireless. I mean, look at his schedule. By the time that interview had occurred, there were many instances of the president having a very light schedule on overseas trips, canceling events with foreign leaders. They say, well, he always did his job and he did his job great. No, he canceled events and he had a very light schedule. So here again, he asked the pro forma question. She bats it away with one of their usual lines of spin. Oh, he's so energetic. He runs circles around the younger staff. There's no evidence of it. It's a made up piece of spin. And he seemed to accept it there. Here's another example, again, drawn from the same appearance that the publisher used to prove that Jake Tapper was tough. And this is with another Biden spokesperson, Kate Bedingfield, who, by the way, was a CNN consultant. So she's being paid by CNN to spin for Joe Biden with her colleagues, with whom she shares a green room and everything else. This is from February of 2024, shortly before everything went south for Joe Biden.
So this memory issue is already out there.
But I want to know how many voters in Michigan, Wisconsin, you think know the difference between
No,
Cole
they don't
and,
know, but they
Merkel,
know when
or
somebody
are going to cast their vote. Well, you asked.
Okay.
Or are going to cast their vote for president based on whether someone is naming Emmanuel Macron or Francois Mitterrand, whose name they probably don't even know.
Here is perhaps the biggest tell of all. If you're a reporter and you are determined to get to the bottom of this, if you think there may be a cover-up at the highest levels of the government, a potential constitutional crisis, you would not treat Biden officials with humor or lightness. You would be tough and determined to get to the bottom of it. You don't ask about it in the context of polls, which is the way he mostly asked about it. You don't accept spin that voters don't care. If you really are concerned about getting to the bottom of this, you ask the question. It just is so funny I even have to say this. You ask the question about specific incidents and how they would explain it. And the one I always come back to is when there was an event in honor of a congresswoman who had passed away, and Joe Biden tried to speak to her as if she were alive and there, okay? That's not confusing the names of two European leaders. That's not knowing which way to walk off the stage. That's not having your first public event at noon. That's not doing events at night. That is right in plain sight. And to ask about it the way he did in that appearance and to accept her spin that voters don't care, again, welcome to do it if that's what you want to do. But to do that and then write a book saying I was determined to get to the bottom of it. This is I don't mean to just pick on Jake Tapper, but he's the one who wrote the book. This is where practically every reporter is. They engaged in the lightest questioning, the lightest possible questioning, and then accepted the bullying, accepted the spin, and again, they acted as if now, Jake Tapper's acting as if he had been determined to get to the bottom of it. All right, this is from 2020, okay? Right before the 2020 election, Laura Trump, President Trump's daughter-in-law, did an interview with Jake Tapper, and watch how indignant he gets at the mere suggestion that Joe Biden, who's doing his Delaware basement campaign, has suffered mental decline. Please roll 109.
Every time he comes on stage or they turn to him, I'm like, Joe, can you get it out? Let's get the words out, Joe. You kind of feel bad for him.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
You have
to
no
watch somebody on stage
It's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
But when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were
stuttering,
mocking his stutter.
idea, Joe
Yeah,
Biden.
I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no
Jake.
standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar. Plenty of people have diagnosed your father from afar, and I'm sure it offends you. Your father-in-law from afar. I'm sure it offends you. You don't have any standing to say.
I'm not diagnosing him. What I'm saying, Jake,
you just talked
is
about
that
a cognitive decline.
That Joe Biden
I have one last
struggling
question for you, Laura. You can't
times on stage, and it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay,
that is all I'm saying. I genuinely feel
Laura
sorry
Trump.
for Joe Biden.
I appreciate it. I'm sure.
Yeah, so he indignantly cuts off the interview. She's not a doctor. Jake's not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. But I talked to a lot of doctors in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. And many of them said, look, I don't usually diagnose people from afar, but obviously there's mental and cognitive decline. He criticized her and cut her off, and I think was a little rude to her with indignity, saying, how dare you say that you're in a position to say the guy has mental decline? Well, guess what? Now that Jake Tapper has written a book about this, he says right in the publicity material for the book that there was this mental decline that was so apparent and that there was this big cover-up in the White House. Now, I give them credit for pointing out the cover-up in the White House because that was not aggressively covered, because anytime anyone tried to do it, they were threatened and bullied and spun in public, and most reporters just gave up. But you cannot be part of restoring the credibility of the media to cover Donald Trump aggressively if your posture is, oh, we did nothing wrong. We aggressively covered it. Or worse, in some ways, we didn't even see it. How could we have seen it? We weren't in these private meetings. The cover-up was so intense. I'll say again, Joe Biden's decline was not uniform. There were days when he was just fine. So Republicans who say he was 100% gone and weekend at Bernie's and someone else was running the government, that's not true. But his decline was pronounced. There's a reason why he had a light schedule. He didn't talk to reporters. And there's a reason why all these things that happened in public that we all saw were ignored by the press because they didn't want to help Donald Trump win. They didn't want to be blamed if he won again. It's one of the most embarrassing things I've seen. So this morning, I'm reading Politico, their daily tip sheet, the Politico playbook. And this is what they write. And it's amazing to me that this is still the way the press, which defended and protected Joe Biden, is framing things. For what it's worth, Biden has continued to deny any suggestion that he experienced cognitive decline while in office. They are wrong, the former president said in an interview last week on The View. There's nothing to sustain that. I mean, I get letting Joe Biden have his say, but for what it's worth, Joe Biden has continued to deny any suggestion he experienced cognitive decline. I mean, how could they write that? How could they credit that? It makes no sense, but it's the mindset that most every reporter, not Alex Thompson, but his co-author, and again, almost every reporter that's now being asked to, with the authority and the responsibility of covering Donald Trump, to be responsible for that. It's the same line. So Jake Tapper, his book coming out in a week. Here he is this morning on CNN, creating a whole new set of realities. Watch this.
You have an entire White House press corps, though, following him around. And I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024. And we spoke with more than 200 people, most of whom, almost all of whom were Democrats, and almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after Election Day.
All right. Again, amazing. True. Here's something true that he said, that Jake Tapper said on CNN this morning. True that there was a cover-up, that senior Biden officials worked very hard to cover up as much as they could his decline, including amongst other people in the government and in the campaign. That's true. Here's two things that are not true, okay? And this is where the credibility is just so important, that people be honest. I shouldn't be the only one in the media being honest about this. It's bizarre, okay? One thing that's not true is that you needed, that the cover-up was so good that no one could see this, that we couldn't possibly have gotten to the bottom of this during the election. Again, it makes me mental. It was clear. I saw it with my own eyes in 2017 at a public event with hundreds of people. You saw it almost every day, not every day, but almost every day, both in what he did and the fact that he had such a limited schedule. So it is not true that it's only after the election that Jake Tapper could have gotten to the bottom of this and the rest of the Washington press corps could have gotten to the bottom of it. The other thing that's not true is that the press is blameless, because they were more than just stymied in the telling of Jake Tapper. They were stymied from getting to the truth. No, they weren't. They were part of the conspiracy and the cover-up. They allowed themselves to believe the ridiculous spin on TV in public, and privately they allowed themselves to be browbeat. I know reporters, again, I said before, I don't know that Jake Tapper was browbeat by Biden folks, but I know reporters who were. They were told, you will lose access. The New York Post lost access because they covered the Hunter Biden story. Reporters who covered any story the Biden people didn't like were denied access. Does this sound familiar? A White House denying access to the press when they don't like what's written or said? This is a crisis. The book's going to come out. Conservatives online are already criticizing it along the same lines I am. But this should not be a red-blue thing where the Democrats pretend that the book is on the up and up, and the press pretends the book is on the up and up, and they're criticized by red people on X and elsewhere. That shouldn't be the way this goes. Because the true story of what happened, whatever the book reveals about the cover-up within the administration, the true story is that video that the publisher put together to try to show Jake Tapper in the best light about how aggressive he was before the election, that's weak tea. But it becomes even more watered down when you show the full context of what he said in those very appearances and elsewhere. People treated it like a political story, like a polling story, like a partisan story. That's not what this was. If you want an America where the press corps can hold Donald Trump accountable, he's the current president, hold Donald Trump accountable. You want an America where this book is an opportunity not for Jake Tapper to make money and his co-author to make money. It's an opportunity for the press, every organization that participated in the cover-up, to come clean and to say what, again, is so obvious. I shouldn't have to say it. It was clear that Joe Biden had cognitive decline. It was clear that it was spun and covered up and bullying tactics were used. it was clear that people who didn't say it aloud had a partisan interest in not saying it aloud, and that included the media, which didn't say a word, not because they couldn't see it, but because they didn't want to be accused of helping Donald Trump win. I want this to be an opportunity to come clean, because if we don't now, I'm not sure what other opportunity people will take. It's not that hard. Be honest. Say what happened. Say what we all saw in countless videos, in countless presidential appearances. Say it. Because if we do, then we can do our jobs correctly and cover the current president with aggressively and with the trust of the American people.
Securing a home with Simply Safe is one of the easiest and most important decisions you can make. Arming the system ensures that your family and possessions are protected. Whether stepping out for the day or settling in for the night, this small action delivers something priceless: peace of mind. Simply Safe provides protection in a crisis. With Simply Safe, millions of Americans enjoy the new standard in home security and greater peace of mind every time they arm their system, when heading out in the morning or when locking up each night. If someone's lurking around or acting suspiciously, those agents see and speak to them in real time, activate spotlights, and even contact the police, all before they have the chance to get inside your home. No long-term contracts or cancellation fees. Monitoring plans start affordably at around $1 a day, 60-day satisfaction guarantee, or your money back. Visit simplysafe.com/Megyn to claim 50% off a new system with a professional monitoring plan and get your first month free. That's simply, with an I, safe.com/Megyn. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Well, we must have stumbled into some bad luck, because Dylan Mulvaney is back. I thought we left Dylan Mulvaney behind in 2023. The last time Dylan Mulvaney was famous, Joe Biden was still president, and honestly, he might have still known what day it was. But Dylan Mulvaney is back in the news, and you'll never guess why. Dylan Mulvaney is cosplaying Melania Trump's New Year's Eve outfit from about 6 months ago. That's what Dylan Mulvaney is doing. Honestly, Dylan, you don't look that great. Now, at first, I had no idea how Dylan Mulvaney ended up with Melania Trump's Versace dress from New Year's Eve. I thought, you know what? Maybe Melania Trump and her amazing, iconic stylist, Hervé Pierre, left it in a donation bin that Dylan Mulvaney went to rummage through like a little raccoon. That was my first theory. My second theory was this. Maybe Melania Trump, she's having so much fun on New Year's Eve at Mar-a-Lago, she goes up and tosses the dress off the tower at Mar-a-Lago into the bushes, and Dylan Mulvaney, like a little raccoon, takes the dress and runs off with it. But turns out that is not the case. Donatella Versace herself sent Dylan Mulvaney this iconic dress that our wonderful, beautiful First Lady Melania Trump wore back on New Year's Eve. Now, we have a picture of Donatella Versace. It's going to make you gag. Let's put it up right now. So when we look at this picture at first, I'm just going to call it like I see it. That's why you guys come here. We are kicking the show off with a bang. We've got Dylan Mulvaney, Donatella Versace. When I look at this picture, I can't tell who's transgender. I can't tell who's had more plastic surgery. Honestly, Dylan Mulvaney has had facial feminization surgery, gender transition surgery, hormones, Botox, you name it, and still looks like more of a woman than Donatella Versace, who is slowly morphing into Mickey Rourke. I don't think Donatella is going to be sending me clothes after this episode, but nonetheless, who cares? I'll also say this. Dylan Mulvaney is not good for any brand. The fastest way to tank your brand is to have Dylan Mulvaney endorse it. We saw that with Bud Light, right? They sent Dylan Mulvaney all of these cans with his face on it, and immediately the stock started to plummet. But I'm the type of person, because I call it like I see it, because I'm fair, I actually somewhat defended Dylan Mulvaney in the Bud Light scandal, and let me tell you why. This is one of my first big viral videos. Some of you who've been with me for years, you might remember this. So Dylan Mulvaney was getting lambasted, raked over the coals for this Bud Light scandal. And I said, you know what? Bud Light, they're the ones who strayed from their core competencies. Bud Light, they're the ones who decided to send all these cans to a man in a dress who mocks women for a living, because that's what Dylan Mulvaney does. That's how Dylan Mulvaney became famous. He was posting these videos saying, I chipped a nail, I'm having a bad day, I must be a girl, this is what womanhood is like. My life has been so enriched by the strong women within it. There are strong, incredible women producing the show right now behind the camera. I can tell you, Dylan Mulvaney knows absolutely nothing about womanhood if he thinks it's makeup, lipstick, hair extensions, and dresses. That has nothing to do with real womanhood. I was raised by a strong, independent woman. I can tell you that right now. Dylan Mulvaney is a joke. But Bud Light, they sent Dylan the cans. All Dylan was doing was collecting a check, doing a brand deal like every other influencer. Now, Bud Light, most of the people who drink Bud Light, they are not transgender. They are not men in dresses. They are not cringeworthy influencers, but some dumbass at Bud Light thought it would be a good idea to send Dylan Mulvaney those cans. I actually think Versace, this liberal, elite, high fashion institution, sending dresses to Dylan Mulvaney makes a little bit more sense. But what I don't understand is this. Donatella Versace, she could send clothes to angel moms, warrior moms, school teachers. Some of you out there would love to have a hair and makeup session, have someone come and bring you a fancy $1,000 dress to put on for the day and go to a fabulous event. But Donatella Versace, she is telling you where her priorities lie, right? She doesn't care about the forgotten men and women of this country. She cares about this transgender influencer who makes a mockery of women every single day and then wants to cry and play the victim. That's what Dylan Mulvaney does, right? Dylan Mulvaney tries to say, oh my God, everyone's so mean to me. Everyone's so harsh on me. Dylan, you have become rich and famous because you put a dress on, all right? People would love to do that. I wish I didn't have to work that hard. In my next life, we can all come back as Dylan Mulvaney and become rich and famous for doing absolutely nothing. Now, Dylan Mulvaney, he was praised by his fashion. He had think pieces written on him in Vogue. But if you're a Republican, if you're a conservative, if you're a real woman who happens to be an independent and goes against the left-wing doctrine, you are going to get attacked by the fashion elites. And that's what they did to First Lady Melania Trump just a few months ago in January in Vogue. They decided to denigrate her official White House portrait where she looks strong, she looks incredible, she looks like she's ready to take on the world. But Vogue, they really had a problem with this. We have a quote right here from the journalist Hannah Jackson. Let me read it to you. She said, Trump looked more like she was guest starring on an episode of The Apprentice than assuming the role of First Lady of the United States. Trump's clothing certainly didn't help the boardroom pastiche. The choice to wear a tuxedo as opposed to a blazer or blouse made Trump look more like a freelance magician than a public servant. It's perhaps unsurprising that a woman who lived in a gold-encrusted penthouse, whose fame is so intertwined with a reality television empire, would refuse to abandon theatrics and when faced with 248 years of tradition. So this journalist, Hannah Jackson, let's put her up on the screen, right? Let's put Hannah Jackson up on the screen. She has made a living tearing down beautiful conservative women who care about the children in our country. That's what Melania Trump is doing. She has the Take It Down Act. She's doing tons of incredible things, right? And the fashion literati, all of these liberals like Hannah Jackson who live in their walk-up apartments in Bushwick and are miserable and just want to tear down anybody they don't like, what they don't understand is this. If Melania Trump had a D next to her name, they would love her. The same thing with Usha Vance, right? The fact that Usha Vance happens to be a Republican, she happens to be married to J.D. Vance, they are going to tear her down because all of these people, they want to preach feminism and acceptance and lifting women up. They want to preach about Roe v. Wade and whine about the Dobbs decision. But when it actually comes to uplifting women who have an R next to their name and happen to be Republicans, conservatives, MAGA, even independents, no, they have no room for those women. And objectively speaking, I say this as a gay man, I can be objective. If we look at Jill Biden, Michelle Obama, and Melania Trump, Melania Trump is the most stunning first lady we've had in decades, okay? I don't care what you want to say, everybody. You can act like keyboard warriors. Melania Trump is the most stunning first lady we've had in decades. I also have to point out, Vogue used to love Melania Trump. Before she was first lady, before her husband got into presidential politics as a Republican, they would put Melania on the cover of Vogue. Now, they're never going to put her on the cover of Vogue as first lady, which I think is an atrocity. Jill Biden has been on the cover of Vogue 3 times, and she looks like a streetwalker in her fishnet leggings and her leather skirts. That woman... Joe Biden, you look like a streetwalker on Houston Street. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be cordial. It's our first ever episode. I'm going to have some decorum. We're here on Megyn Kelly's network. I'm going to have some decorum. I will also say, Michelle Obama, she's been on the cover of Vogue 3 times herself, and she looks like an utter calamity half the time. I don't know who is styling Michelle Obama. Maybe it's Stevie Wonder, but the fact that she's been on the cover of Vogue 3 times is crazy, and Melania has never been on the cover of Vogue once as First Lady. So all of these liberal, fashion, literati folks who sit in their penthouse apartments, they can continue to tear down conservative women all they want. But Trump won the popular vote. He won 77 million votes from Americans. That's about half the country. Kamala Harris, she got her ass handed to her. She lost every single swing state. President Trump won the House, the Senate, the Electoral College. So all of these folks, they can turn their backs on half the country. They can denigrate half the women in this country. But even from a capitalistic standpoint, I don't understand what Vogue is doing. Why are you tearing down conservative women when you could be giving them a shot? Usha Vance, she's an Indian American. She's the first Hindu second lady. If she had a D next to her name, if Usha Vance were a Democrat, they would have loved her. But that's why people aren't buying Vogue. That's why these magazines are going out of fashion, going out of style, and shutting down. So to conclude and bring it all home, Melania Trump, she wears a dress on New Year's Eve. She is attacked. She is raked over the coals. They say her outfit is too scandalous. Why is she wearing that as First Lady? Vogue drags her. They say she's a freelance magician. They say she's boardroom pastiche. Okay, that's what they say about Melania Trump. Dylan Mulvaney, a man, puts on the same dress and is praised by the fashion literati. Dylan Mulvaney puts on the exact same dress, like when you order it online versus when it arrives in the mail. Dylan Mulvaney looks like the Alibaba, Temu, Wish version of Melania Trump. Dylan, you wish you had the fashion wherewithal of Melania Trump. You don't. You tried. Better luck next time. But Dylan Mulvaney puts on the exact same dress and is praised. Vogue is saying Dylan looks incredible. They say Dylan Mulvaney is opening doors for women. That's how far the feminist movement has come on the left. A man in a dress with balls. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't have balls anymore. We'll have to check in and get back to you on that one. But Dylan Mulvaney, a man, is opening doors for women and breaking down barriers for women for putting on a $1,000 dress and going out to a fancy, highfalutin event. All of you liberals are out of touch. You're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, like I said in the intro. I wish you well.
This July, speaking of resets, there's a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio. This bloc of emerging superpowers, including China, Russia, India, and Iran, are meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, some worry global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of dollars in your savings. While this transition will not happen overnight, the Rio Reset could mark a pivotal moment. So learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting MK to the number 989898. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. Text MK to 989898 today.
We're now in week 2, almost, since that disastrous Prince Harry interview with the BBC. He lost a major court case. He sat in front of a reporter for the BBC, and he basically walked right up to alleging that the British royal family wants to kill him, Meghan, and probably his 2 innocent young children, but also that he would love to get back in. He would love to get back in, but he also just needs all of the security that this latest court ruling once again denied him, okay? Because he's not a working royal anymore by his own decision, okay? So the British taxpayers aren't gonna pay for this. And he's so important. So this was a humiliation. And if you go and look at that interview on YouTube, you can see, I mean, the whole demeanor, his comportment, the way he's talking, like his mouth is like even smaller than usual. He can't get the words out. He is just completely, he uses the word devastated. He says, I'm devastated. That is a man who is fully emasculated, if you ask me. Okay, so what does Megyn do? when things go wrong, like really, really wrong, like really, really, really bad, Megyn does this. She puts on this face and everything's great. Everything's great. In fact, things are better than they were before Harry's latest fuck up, okay? So she took to Instagram, where her likes and comments seem to be permanently disabled, to brag about having been at Beyonce's show the night before with that man, Harry. Remember, never forget, that man who loves me so much. So of course, now this is a carousel, right? Because we have to experience like all of her emotions and her winning, her constant winning. So she begins this post in the most banal, cliched way possible, okay? She begins this post with the following 3 words. About last night. Like everybody uses that. Like it should be like whoever runs Instagrams, you know, it's not Mark Zuckerberg, but whoever, like that should just be banned. About last night. It's not cute anymore. It's not funny, whatever. Okay. So of course she uses the most hackneyed, trite thing she can because she has not, as I've said, an original freaking thought in her head. So first, we're going to see Megyn standing at the Beyonce show. And I think in this one, she might be wearing Harry's hat. Yeah. Okay, she's wearing, now the hat is going to come into play later. Now look at, first of all, I want you to take this all in because every single thing is telling us something. And I want you to think about the ways in which she thinks she's showing us she and Harry are winning, but she's actually showing us that they are losing as ever. Okay, so that's that image. This is the next image. And this was also this was like the center photo on page 6 over the weekend in the Sunday paper. Look at I mean, look at the smiles. Okay, they're having the best time. Next, we're going to look at Megyn dancing at the Beyonce show because, you know, she's not just a royal in exile. She's like a cool royal in exile. So she's dancing. She's letting loose. She's letting her hair down. Oh my God, you guys, she can't dance. She can't dance. Like she's barely moving. It's like Taylor Swift can't dance. So like they usually make her just walk on stage, just like she's a supermodel. Like she walks over here and then she walks over there. Like Megyn is like barely, like she's like a robot. She's like dancing like a robot. Okay, then next in her carousel, we see Harry kissing Megyn on the cheek because what is he doing if he's not showing that he's constantly a supplicant? He's the help. He has to show that she is the adored one. And that's, by the way, in stark contrast to the two of them in New York City a couple of weeks ago at the Time 100 summit, where she exited their vehicle and he went to grab her hand and she just like, I have a stranger to hug. Get away from me. Peon, you disgust me. Okay, next, Megyn with friends. Again, who are these people? Like, I don't recognize any of them from the Netflix show With Love, Megyn. Like, where's Daniel, the makeup artist? Where's Mindy Kaling? Who are these no names that I don't notice? Okay, again, she's not with celebrities. Okay, I don't know who these people are. And then we're going to take a look at, okay, here is this video of Beyonce and Megyn clapping together? Can this be right? No, they're not together. Of course not. Megyn's just having a moment. Okay, and then let's see. There's another picture of her and Harry. It's a selfie. Nobody cares. The hat is what I want to get to. The hat. So the hat she was wearing, which we are informed was Harry's. You guys look at this thing, okay? She's got stenciled inside the brim of the hat, on the underside of the brim of the hat, which would be, again, Harry's, Archie in all capital letters, like block letters. Underneath that, Lily, all block letters. And underneath that, my love. My love. Not Megyn, but, hearkening to the Jamie Carlina interview that she did like 2 weeks ago, where she sighed theatrically, because there's no other kind of Meghan Markle sigh, but a theatrical sigh. That man, and she's telling us he comes in after she has torn herself away from her 2 children for a moment of respite. And she goes into an adjoining room where she now misses them so much, she has to start scrolling through her phone to look at photos of them, even though they're in the next room. And Harry walks in and he says, "My love, can't you just give yourself a break?" So, and okay, what this hat shows is not only, I think Harry's balls, I think she like weighted them down with like some concrete per The Sopranos and like threw them in a body of water and they're gone. That's it. This guy's fully emasculated. And that's her showing us the way she's got control of him and how much he adores her. And it also shows us that Megyn is not what she purports to be and so badly wants to be. She thinks she's like the cool royal, the American easy breezy California cool royal with a wellness brand or a food brand like Gwyneth. Like, she's not cool. Okay. There's zero about that hat and everything else about in that Instagram post that is cool. And, I'm not saying cool is the cost of entry for everything. It's certainly not, but authenticity sure as fuck is. And what runs on a dual track with authenticity? Often you're cool. Okay. Because you don't really give a shit. And her problem is she gives way too much of a shit. Hence that post. Now, look at the caption, because she then says like, "Thanks to Beyonce and team for a wonderful night." Okay. So this caption, what's not in this caption is telling us everything. Okay. First of all, look at where they're seated. They're not in a VIP box. Okay. This isn't Oprah with her astronaut friend in bedazzled blue jeans, Gail, in a VIP section at Beyonce's show. Okay. So she got tickets either on StubHub or someone called someone in Beyonce's camp and they were like, "Okay, just throw her a bone." But they're up there, okay? They're like in the mid-section of this tour, which by the way is flopping all over the place. So it's not like it's a hard ticket to get, okay? Then she says, thanks to Beyonce and her team for a great night. She doesn't say, "Thanks to Beyonce for hooking us up. Thanks to Beyonce's team for making sure H and I, or that man and I, had everything at our fingertips and didn't want for a moment. We had a personal concierge. I had a personal bathroom." She's not saying any of that. Okay. So she's trying to make it seem like she and H are like super tight with Beyonce and Jay and her, and like, think ahead. Okay, Megyn, think ahead for once. The Diddy trial is underway in New York City as we speak. I think Jay-Z, whatever, I think he's got a few concerns, okay? So maybe you don't want to be adjacent to them. Maybe you don't. Okay, so they try to put this happy face on this. But then Sunday, you guys, this still photo emerges of Harry, who has just finished whining. Okay, look at this photo. He is in London on his own. This looks like morning light to me, early morning light. A Ring camera. He's on his cell phone, and a Ring camera has caught him buzzing someone's townhouse. The trash cans in the background. There's one for recycling, it looks like, and one for trash, but they're trash cans. Again, I miss Andy Warhol deeply. This is like one of the best celebrity photos. It's an abundance of riches. So this guy who just got finished moaning to the world that he needs 24/7, like Mossad level security when he goes to the UK because he's that important, is caught wandering around a London neighborhood alone in what looks like, frankly, last night's suit, knocking on random doors. There is no security anywhere in sight, anywhere. So which is it, Harry? Now, the official line that came out, and I don't think it was like from Harry per se, but like his camp, was that he was merely looking for a friend of his and his wife who lived in that neighborhood. And that was the last known address he had for them. And so clearly, if this story is true, which I doubt, and we'll get into why, I think that the only other explanation would be like these two left no forwarding address for him. Okay. Location unknown. They're in the equivalent of the aristocracy's witness protection program from Harry and his terrible wife, Megyn. Now, I don't believe that story is true because I saw a lot of online speculation that this is behavior that, we'll say, a hard partier would exhibit. And as I disclosed once when I was on Megyn Kelly's show, like, I've never done hard drugs in my life. I was maybe offered cocaine twice in my life, and I was like, I don't want it, thank you. And by the way, like, friends of mine later told me it's a great thing you never tried it, because you probably would have loved it, because all cocaine makes you want to do is talk. And I love to talk, as you know. So I probably would have wound up in rehab like more than once. Anyway, they're saying, this speculation online, which kind of tracks to me, is that, like, he had a long night with people who were kind of party buddies who he didn't really know well, but for the purposes of that evening, they had a lot of commonalities. And then he woke up somewhere and wasn't quite sure where he was, but he left something behind. It obviously wasn't his cell phone because he's on it, but he left something behind. But so why not just call Megyn? Because he can't, because he's fucked up yet again. So he can't call Megyn, can't call his daddy, can't call his brother or his sister-in-law. He can't really call any friends because he doesn't know where the fuck they are, because they've all exited stage left years ago. I wonder who he really is trying to call. Anyway, so he left something behind, and, you know, his dignity is the least of it. Now, I would like to get to another news dump. They call it like a Friday news dump, when an outlet, a politician, a movie star announces something they hope will get buried, as everybody just turns to their weekend and goes about their lives, as we should. But this one really affected me deeply, and I'm actually not being sarcastic, because I am a deep abiding fan of the original Real Housewives of New York City, which has given us so much over the years. But on Friday, Bravo announced that they are canceling what we fans call Roni. Now, the last 2 to 3 seasons, it was the reboot. It was only 2 seasons, no great loss. Of course they should have canceled it. It was terrible. They remade it. They fired the original cast. Huge mistake, in my opinion. After George Floyd was murdered and everything was seen through a different lens, and, you know, they brought in a black housewife who's like, was taking them up to Harlem and giving them lessons in African-American history. That is not the show, okay? That is not the show. So they tried to reboot it with like all these very stiff women who were not part of the same social circle. There were no stakes, like high stakes. And these are, you know, things we're revisiting on this show, is like actual friendship breakups are high stakes. And these women, the OGs of Roni, were all real friends before they ever started shooting. Like they had known each other for decades. So when cameras get involved and stardom gets involved and money gets involved and friendships begin to fracture and marriages begin to fracture, like now we're talking, like this is real conflict. So I would like to pay tribute, if I may, to, and again, she wound up in Sunday's New York Post, as she should. She is a true star, one Countess Luann de Lesseps. This woman is a legend. We were introduced to her, lo, those many years ago, she was a nurse or a nurse practitioner from Connecticut who had happened to marry like a minor royal. I mean, these titles at this point, they're like honorary titles. They don't really mean anything. He was a count. I don't even remember what country he's from. But so she went by the Countess on like the Upper East Side and like out in the Hamptons. It was like, you couldn't call her Luann. She was the Countess, okay? You know, by season 3, the Count has left her for a younger woman. It's all over page 6. They've got to sell the house in the Hamptons. She has what she calls an estate sale. That's what wealthy people call it. It's a tag sale. Okay, she was getting rid of her stuff. She needed the money. She had to move in with another Real Housewife, but she has given us so much over the years. Okay, now post her divorce, she was dating around, and like as she should, like she had no shame. She was like sex positive before that was even a thing in the culture. So watch Luann just expertly defang these 2 other uptight, much younger housewives, because they're all on vacation. And Luann went out after they went home, got drunk, picked up a guy, brought him home. And these other 2 are like, how dare you party on vacation? Watch this.
So be cool. Don't be all like uncool.
Okay, right there, a meme. A meme was born, a star was born, okay? Next, again, I love Luann for this. Alcohol takes many a housewife down. And Luann will have her struggles after, in the years after this moment. But when I saw this, I thought, when you first are becoming friends with people or you're dating somebody and like they have one too many, like that is like the moment where you're in or you're out, because like there are two kinds of drunks in the world, happy drunks and mean drunks. And that is when the true person comes out. Okay. Luann, I am happy to report, was a happy drunk. Watch this.
Oh my God, Luann, are you okay? You fell in the bushes?
Luann has drunkenly fallen in the bushes and she looks like a freaking supermodel doing it, okay? Goals. Okay, next. So then Luann goes on to marry this guy named Tom, who has been spotted by every housewife and every friend of a housewife out in the wilds of upper New York City, most usually at the Regency Bar in Manhattan, making out with women who are not his fiance, Luann, but she goes ahead with the marriage. Then the marriage falls apart, like within a year. She's humiliated. She begins drinking to cope. She gets arrested. It's epic. I can only tell you, go back and watch, like treat yourself. Okay, so here she is, having been humiliated on a global scale, coming back to the show.
I've been traveling, I've been to prison, and I just want to be close to home.
I've been traveling, I've been to prison, I just want to be close to home. That was the best thing that ever happened to her, because she rebirthed herself as a legit cabaret star. And if you want a lesson, Meghan Markle could take a lesson in like getting back up after you have fallen down repeatedly in public. Take a lesson, okay? Get some humility. It'll never happen. But like, I would just like to say, Luann, we love you still. And I maintain hope that Bravo figures out a way to bring back a lot of those originals, because they are unparalleled. Okay. Next, I want to go to this thing that's been leaking in the news so Kelly Clarkson is apparently done with her talk show. It's too grueling. She doesn't want to do it anymore. Fine. Now there are all these leaks that like, who's going to get the job? Hoda Kotb, who recently flounced out of the Today Show, 4th Hour with Jenna, cushiest job on television, except you got to talk to Jenna, which is like pulling teeth because she's not that bright. But they gave Hoda like a month-long farewell, and like that, but like I kind of feel like that's kind of a fuck you, because like you build that person up to basically you're saying to them, no one can replace you, Hoda. Well, guess what? Anybody can replace Hoda. Like, and they did. They replaced her. So now she's stuck like up in Westchester or somewhere, like taking her kids to school, and like it's boring. It's boring. She's in her 60s. So I think these leaks are coming from Camp Hoda, who has nothing to say except stuff like, again, with Jamie Kern-Lima, like I'm on a different cosmic plane with Jamie Kern-Lima. That's all she talked about. Her podcast is called Making Space. Okay, so it's just like intellectually vapid and totally void. And who's gonna hire Hoda for this time slot? She's a good 20 years older than Kelly Clarkson. She can't have like any kind of conversation that's beyond like woo-woo, self-affirming bullshit. I don't see it happening. Now, Taylor Swift has been dragged into this Blake Lively lawsuit, and she got word last week that she is going to be subpoenaed by Justin Baldoni, who Blake Lively, her former best friend, and Blake's husband, Ryan Reynolds, are trying to take down. Okay, they are trying to take this guy down. And guess what his legal team does? They're like, well, fuck you. We're subpoenaing Taylor Swift. So Taylor Swift's lawyers issued like a very lengthy statement, and I will spare you the legalese. I'll just get to the Taylor part of it, which is the 13-year-old mean girl part of it, which is like, I'm so betrayed. I'm so betrayed by Blake Lively. I'm like devastated. I can't believe she would do this to me. I had nothing to do with this. I'm completely floored. Her words, I've been exploited. Oh my God. Okay. So then Taylor and her rumored fiance, Travis Kelce, were spotted and photographed out at a Mother's Day lunch for Travis's mom. And when I tell you, like, people like Taylor Swift get photographed when they want to be photographed, okay? And when people like Taylor Swift want to go out and have a meal in complete privacy, they have people, and it's not even just like an assistant, it's like a chief of fucking staff who calls like the restaurant and says, so-and-so's coming in, we need a private room. And like, if she wants to be shot, She's going to be shot by paparazzi. Otherwise, we need a back entrance, et cetera, et cetera. So when she's shot out like with regular people at like a regular mid-priced American suburban restaurant, that is a message that she is sending, which is like, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. Now, I just want to get to one other thing vis-a-vis Taylor, because, you know, Taylor Swift, you don't get to be this famous this long, mount the most successful, profitable, global musical tour in history, without gunning for it big time, okay? So I have dug out for you guys this email that her father, Scott, wrote. Okay, it's 20 years old. So she's 35 now. So she was around 15 years old when Scott Swift wrote this lengthy email. And you can go look it up. It's part of a legitimate lawsuit that was brought against them by Taylor's former manager, a guy named Daniel, I don't think I'm pronounced Dimtro, D-Y-M. Anyway, this email is like for days. I'm dying. Okay, so he starts out, Dan, bear with me. I need to vent. Okay. Now he starts by saying, we are getting to a very important time in Taylor's career. And to keep in mind, quote, I am not quite the idiot that Andrea portrays me to be. Andrea is Taylor's mom, Scott's now ex-wife. Now, he says, my clients do not want to hear how much stress I am under or what I have done or how much time I have spent copying videotapes and sending them out when Taylor was 11. Okay, these people were hustling. He says, Taylor will define your life's work. Okay? He goes on to say, now he's a financial advisor and he's bragging a lot about the money he makes for people and why like he needs to be taken seriously because he makes a lot of money for a lot of people. Who has made every single client listen to Taylor's latest song before we went over their financial plans? Are you kidding me? If my financial planner says, hey, you got to listen to my kid's demo tape before we can like address your very real concern. Like I'm like parachuting out of there immediately. Okay, now we're getting into the martyrdom part of this email. Okay, now keep in mind that, remember when it was rumored that the Olsen twins there was like a third Olsen who like the Olsen parents kept in the basement because they were like malformed or something. And, you know, it wasn't true. But Taylor has a brother named Austin and we never hear about Austin and we never see Austin. And I kind of think this may be Austin's choice, or he just got the message from his parents and Taylor that like, he's a total afterthought. And if Taylor needs an organ someday, they'll call you back into this picture, but otherwise you can stay away. Okay, this is Scott. Who gets to go to New York, New England, and every cool appearance? Not Dad. Can't fix hair. Dad talks too much. Who pays for trips to New York? Dad. Who makes sure and takes days off to make sure that whether it was Radio Disney, Brits Camp, I'm guessing that's Britney Spears, or any event that we had stuff to give away, CDs, Frisbees, headshots, who even thought to put that stuff together? Who blew up 500 beach balls on the roof for Radio Disney? This sounds like hell. Dad, quote, it's Britney. We are going to Britney's camp, but you and Austin can't come. That sounds like he's putting those words in the mouth of his ex-wife, Andrea. We are going to Britney's camp, but you and Austin can't come. Okay, this email is unbelievable. Who gets to babysit Austin? I guess that's Scott. Scott's got to sit with the ringer of these two kids, not the star. Who at the last minute has to find some place to print CDs? You got it, Dad. Who funds the whole process, but does not get to come to the dance? Dad. Oh my effing God. He says further, as a financial planner, is it fair to Austin that Taylor is taking her half of the estate now? Probably not, but no problem, because everybody in the Swift family is involved in making Taylor Swift fucking happen.